I want to talk about something that I see very few people in the wellness space being fully honest about. Healing fucking hurts. And I don't mean that in some poetic Instagram caption kind of way. I mean that healing hurts in a very real, raw, inconvenient, sometimes even debilitating way. And I think the glossy version of healing that gets sold to us with matcha lattes and sound baths and yoga retreats and glowing skin, it does a genuine disservice to the people who are actually in the thick of it and wondering, why the hell am I feeling worse instead of feeling better? Because this is what I've lived through. For years, close to a decade, I would say, I carried so much tension in my belly, in my hips, in my legs, that at times it was actually difficult to walk comfortably. It was difficult to train, to exercise. It was difficult to just exist in my body without feeling like I was wearing a suit made of concrete. And like many of us, I went down the conventional route with physio and rehab exercises, stretching, yoga. And while all of it helped temporarily, nothing actually changed at the root. The tension kept coming back. I still felt unsafe in my body because the tension itself wasn't a physical problem. It was an emotional one. It was years, possibly decades of unfelt, unprocessed emotion stored in my body. And no amount of stretching was going to release that. Now, when I finally began doing deeper work, somatic healing, shadow work, emotional processing, plant medicine, the release actually started, and it was not pretty. It was not pretty at all. My body, which had been in a fight or flight state for so long, began slowly coming out of survival mode. So that frozen emotion started to thaw. And the thawing process is deeply, profoundly uncomfortable. I'd have muscle twitches, disrupted sleep. I'd be waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning constantly, anger surfacing randomly that I'd buried for years towards family, towards myself. Waves of emotion that I couldn't really explain or predict, suddenly spontaneously crying for no apparent reason. Electricity moving through my nervous system that had been suppressed for so long that it had actually forgotten what it's like to be free. And so this episode is about all of that. As always, to share with you the very real, honest, unfiltered experience of what it actually feels like when your body starts to heal, why it feels worse before it feels better. And I want to ground it in what the science says about why that is the case. And what's more, what's happened and opened up on the other side of it, because there is another side, and I promise you it is so worth it. So if you're in it right now and you're really feeling the discomfort and maybe you're wondering whether you're doing something wrong, this episode is absolutely for you. So stay with me. Now, I've learned over the course of my journey that the body isn't just a vehicle that helps us get around. It is truly a living record of every single thing that you've been through. Significant and seemingly insignificant life event and the memory and the emotion attached to that. It all lives in your body. It lives in your hips, your legs, your shoulders, your jaw, your neck. And for me, it was the tension that, like I said before, made walking feel very difficult. Like all of the muscles, especially on the right side of my body, on my right leg, got seized up. And I had this clicking sensation in my hip that I couldn't really place. And, I did cortisone injections and physio and rehab, stretching, yoga. All of it helped temporarily, but none of it really changed the root. I continued to feel that sense of discomfort, and it was really pissing me off. It was really pissing me off. And so I realized after many years of skepticism and resistance to healing was that this wasn't a physical problem. It was actually an emotional one. Now, Peter Levine, who founded somatic experiencing, a phenomenal technique for helping the body and the nervous system release suppressed emotion, describes how unresolved trauma creates what he calls a frozen residue of energy in the muscular tissue and the fascia of the body. So the body literally holds this incomplete stress response until it's finally given the permission to. Bessel van der Kolk as well, who I've referenced before, The Body Keeps the Score, talks about trauma being encoded in the body's physiology. It's not just in memory or narrative or intellect. It's why conventional talk-based approaches and even physical therapies have limits when the root is emotional. So no amount of stretching will release what emotion has stored. The root has to be addressed. And the thing about the body and why it holds on is that the nervous system's fundamental job is to protect you from threat. So when something overwhelming happens, a relationship breaks down, you get fired from your job, or you're made redundant, or a family member suddenly, tragically passes away, and the emotional response cannot be fully expressed or processed, the nervous system stores that as unfinished business. And as a result of that, it remains on alert, fight or flight, constantly scanning, treating that stored emotion as an ongoing threat that needs to be managed and contained and held in the body. And so that is what survival mode actually is. It's a nervous system that never actually got the signal that the danger, that significant life event has actually passed. Stephen Porges and his work with the polyvagal theory talks about the autonomic nervous system operating across 3 states: safe and social, fight or flight, and shut down or freeze. So chronic suppression of emotion keeps your system anchored in those lower survival states, which is why people, me, who live with stored trauma, often feel chronically tense, hypervigilant, exhausted, emotionally flat, even when their life and circumstances are objectively fine. That's why I couldn't really feel joy or excitement or enthusiasm, even when I was winning, because I was holding on to so much suppressed emotion in my body that I never really got a chance to express those higher, more positive emotional states. Gabor Mate, again, he wrote a book called When the Body Says No, and he talks about the physiological cost of chronic emotional suppression. The body will always find a way to express what the mind refuses to feel, and that typically manifests as disease, chronic pain, physical tension, which is basically your body sending you signals, hey, like, I need you to listen to me because there's a lot of shit here that needs to be dealt with. And so, for me, it was just as bloody painful. The hips, the legs, I mentioned in a previous episode, it was like I had like a corset that I was wearing around my like lower belly, my hips. Like I literally felt cinched at the waist, so much painful tightness, and went for years not really understanding why nothing physical was working. So when I finally acknowledged that there wasn't a physical issue and it was an emotional one, and I started to heal, and this in many ways is what most people don't talk about, is that when healing begins, the nervous system starts coming out of the state that it has been locked in, sometimes for years, even decades, and the frozen emotion begins to thaw. Like if you have some frozen peas that you're leaving out in the sink to thaw. And when the peas are thawing, or when the body and the emotion is thawing, it's not comfortable. It's the furthest thing from it. And for me, again, I can't speak for everyone, but for me, it's looked like spontaneous muscle twitches, disrupted sleep, waking up constantly in the early hours of the morning, having waves of emotion, feeling emotional for no apparent reason. Like just putting on a song in the car and just crying, randomly, intensely, like jolts of energy as like electricity is moving through the body again. Again, we'll unpack in greater detail in future episodes, but I mean, the nervous system is a conductor of electricity. If you've got a blockage in there, if there's an emotion that's suppressed, that electrical energy is not able to flow freely. And so when that emotion gets fully felt and processed and electricity starts moving through the body again, that jolt, those twitches, can feel really uncomfortable and random and, possibly even scary. And I get it. If you're experiencing that, I want you to know that this is part of healing. Of course, definitely turn to a qualified healthcare practitioner, first and foremost. In my own experience, I've noticed that it is a very, very real and common symptom or part of healing. And so the muscle twitches Peter Levine actually talks about in somatic experiencing, maybe it's involuntary trembling or shaking, twitching, they're all understood as a nervous system that's completing that incomplete stress response. So it might look and feel random and strange, but if you look at our friends in the animal kingdom, like a gazelle that has been chased by a lion and gets away, that gazelle actually shakes and trembles to discharge that survival energy. But we humans have actually lost this capacity largely through the way that we've been conditioned, through socialization, through suppression. But when healing begins, the body actually remembers to shake and to tremble and to discharge that survival energy. If you're waking up, in the early hours of the morning, right? This is spoken about in traditional Chinese medicine. Again, for me, in TCM or traditional Chinese medicine, the body's organ clock or orrery cycle maps specific emotional states and organs to different hours of the night. So the 3 to 5 a.m. corresponds to the lungs associated with grief and sadness. 1 to 3 a.m. corresponds to the liver, which is associated with anger and resentment. So waking consistently at these hours during your emotional healing journey is well documented in traditional Chinese medicine as the body processing and releasing the emotions that's associated with those organs. And so for me, I was waking up, 2, 3 a.m. with respect to this anger. It was anger that I had stored towards family members, towards myself. But the anger is not the problem here. It's the unspent energy of protection and self-advocacy. And when it finally surfaces, it can feel bloody overwhelming. Bloody overwhelming. But Bessel van der Kolk describes suppressed anger as one of the most physiologically costly emotions to keep stored in the body because it activates the sympathetic nervous system chronically and keeps the body in a state of low-grade threat. And, it can keep it in a low-grade threat for so long that it becomes normal, when in reality you're actually operating from a predominant emotional state of anger or frustration or resentment. Bruce Perry wrote a book, The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, and he talks about healing in the nervous system must move from the bottom up. The brainstem processes threat first, the limbic system processes emotion second, and then the cortex processes meaning last. So when the body begins healing, it doesn't follow a neat linear path. It moves in waves, releasing layer by layer, and it's why the process can feel super chaotic and non-linear. And so I share all this with you because I don't see a lot of it on Instagram, where most of us spend a lot of time these days. There's a glossy version of healing that gets sold with matcha lattes and sound baths and yoga retreats and this very sensationalized aesthetic of wellness. And look, none of it is wrong. I do yoga, I've done sound baths. They're all helpful tools, but it's often incomplete and it's often misleading if that's the only thing that we see online. Because real healing involves crying, often for extended periods, and sometimes without even knowing why. Shaking and trembling, as I said before, as the nervous system is discharging this emotion, anger surfacing unexpectedly, grief that seems super disproportionate to the present moment, maybe fatigue, just feeling randomly tired as the body is starting to redirect its resources away from containing emotion and towards repair. Disrupted sleep, social withdrawal. I mean, yeah, I for those who know me, may know me as a bit of a hermit, because for so long I withdrew from from friends and social circles just to have solitude and to go through this shitty, yucky, messy process of healing, which I'm still going through. And that's it. I mean, Resmaa Menakem, I don't know if I pronounced that right, she wrote a book called My Grandmother's Hands, and she talked about healing not being a tidy process. It is embodied, it is messy, and it requires you being able to tolerate the discomfort instead of managing it away. Ida Rolf introduced Rolfing, which is like a structural integration of the body. She documented that when physical manipulation released tension in the fascia, clients would often spontaneously begin crying or laughing or expressing strong emotion. So the body and emotion are not separate systems. I hope you get that by now. And I got to tell you, I mean, between the interrupted sleeps and the random outbursts of emotion and the muscle twitches, yeah, I mean, it just felt like something was going wrong. It felt like I was going crazy. But something was actually going right. What I've learned is that what typically feels like deterioration or disorientation actually is integration. What feels like falling apart and losing your marbles is actually the body reorganizing itself at a deeper level of safety. And it's not forever, thankfully. Of course, the healing will continue, but once you go through this yucky, messy part, you do get to the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm still on this path, of course, but I've noticed that what's changed for me physically is I can move more freely. Fascia and the muscles around my leg and my hips have actually opened up a lot. You know, I can train, I can exercise more comfortably, I can walk without a constant tightness, without a feeling of heaviness. You know, I feel like I have greater clarity, less mental noise, chatter, rumination. I feel lighter in my mind, in my body, not like I'm carrying this invisible backpack filled with bricks of emotion everywhere. It was beautiful. It's been fucked, but it's also been beautiful. And, it's transformed my relationships. You know, I have more presence and a deeper level of connection with my friends, with family, with loved ones, with clients, strangers. There's a less reactivity. There's more capacity to actually be with people without the nervous system treating connection as a threat, which, by the way, for so long held me back from being able to do what I'm doing now. You know, to show up fully in my work, in my purpose, in my business, online, because my body actually held me back from doing that because my nervous system thought that it was in danger and it was under threat. And like putting myself out there signaled to my nervous system that, something's going to go wrong. But actually going through this healing process has actually meant that I can take the necessary actions to grow my business, to connect with people, to show up online, to record podcasts. And I just have more energy available to me throughout the day because my nervous system is no longer consuming all of its resources on containing and holding emotion in the body. Stephen Porges talks about this. When the ventral vagal state, which is the safe and social state, becomes more accessible, then the entire system upgrades. You tap into greater levels of creativity, connection, intuition, physical health, emotional resilience, all improve because your baseline has shifted from survival mode to safety. Candace Pert wrote an amazing book called Molecules of Emotion. Groundbreaking research which demonstrated that emotions aren't just psychological events, but they are biochemical ones. So neuropeptides and their receptors are found throughout the body, particularly in the gut, the immune system, the muscular fascia. And so when emotional blockages are released, the biochemistry of the entire body shifts. And at the end of the day, for me, my body is no longer believing that it's in danger. Thank God. And the difference between living in a body that feels safe and living in one that doesn't is not a small thing. It's everything. I believe it's the most important work that we can do to feel safe in our bodies and to help others feel safe in their bodies as well. That is the foundation upon what we can build and create and connect with those around us in our work and in our personal life. So if you're currently going through a really uncomfortable, messy, yucky, shitty healing process, I want you to know that you're not alone. I get it. Sometimes it feels like you're going crazy, like you're losing your marbles and like everything's going wrong. And maybe you feel like, man, I kind of wish I could speed this up and just be fully healed in like the next 24 to 48 hours. That would be really neat. But what I want you to know is that what you're experiencing is likely not a sign that something is wrong. It may just be a sign that something is finally going right. The body moves at its own pace. You can't force it or rush it, unfortunately. Or fortunately. Levine talks about titration, small doses of releasing layers of emotion, staying within the window of tolerance, trusting the body's own innate intelligence. And you don't have to do this alone. In fact, I encourage you not to do this alone, to do it with others, because the nervous system heals in relationship to others. Porges talks about this. Co-regulation is not a luxury. It absolutely is a biological necessity. Healing through relationships, healing by being around others on this path. The actual presence of a regulated nervous system in a romantic relationship or in a men's circle or a women's circle or in the presence of a practitioner or a coach or a guide that you know and that you trust actually helps to regulate yours. And so there are some things that you can do as well as like a practical anchor during the process, which has really served me. Of course, the breath is really powerful. It's a direct line to the nervous system. So getting into breath work or slow regulated breathing or conscious connected breathing is super powerful to help your body heal and to also to continuously remind it that it's safe. Gentle movement, right? Big proponent for yin yoga to, again, restore that sense of safety and continuously teach the body that it's safe and to start signaling that it's okay to release the next layer of emotion. Time in nature. I mean, I go for a dip in the ocean every day. It's a game changer. Let your body discharge electrons and be able to regulate and recalibrate the nervous system. Reduce stimulation, right? So no more revenge scrolling late at night, but acknowledging that, I might be overstimulated right now. What can I do to remove the stimulation? And prioritize sleep. I mean, that's one of the best things you can do, even when sleep is disrupted. And like I said, working with a practitioner or someone who can actually hold space safely. I want to call out Richard Schwartz and his work with internal family systems, or IFS. When parts of you that have been suppressed or hidden begin to surface, the practice of actually turning towards them with a sense of curiosity rather than resistance dramatically reduces the intensity. So even though it might feel like it, you are not being attacked by your own emotions. You're being visited by parts of yourself that have been waiting a very long time to be heard, to be seen. And most important thing throughout all of this is compassion. Have some compassion for yourself. I know I could have used a big dose of compassion through my journey, because this is not something that you can white knuckle. You can't rush this. It might feel like you're going backwards before you're going forwards. It does require a sense of softness and patience and a willingness to just be with what is arising, to breathe through it without immediately trying to fix it or to make it stop. It's a lot harder. It can be really hard to do. It can be easier said than done. But I do want to drive that point home because compassion is the thread that weaves through all of this. I want you to know I'm not at the other side. Like, I'm still in this process. I'm not looking back from a place of perfect completion. I'm very much still in it. I still have days where I feel really like thrown off kilter and flaring up in the body again and turning to food to self-soothe and compassion, right? Compassion for myself, for sinking my face into a bag of chips and just allowing whatever needs to be and crying through it and moving through it and breathing through it. Because healing isn't some destination that you get to where you're finally enlightened and, you sing Kumbaya in a circle and, you're levitating. As cliche as it sounds, it is returning. It's coming back to yourself. It's coming back to that innocent child who entered the world with a level of curiosity and wonder and softness. And so it's slow and sometimes, if not often, very painful, but it's always worthwhile returning to yourself. It always is. So yeah, look, if this landed for you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it, someone who might be in the thick of it right now, wondering whether they're doing something wrong, feeling deeply uncomfortable. Maybe this is the message that they need to hear. If this helped you in any way as well, please leave a rating or a review. That's a small way to give back to this show and to this mission that we're building here. And it can really help grow to serve more people who might benefit from hearing these messages. So what I'll do is I'll actually include in the notes the references that I've made to the different practitioners and researchers that I've brought up today, because I want you to do your own research, right? Don't just listen to one source. Don't just listen to me. This is your healing journey. Treat it with respect. Treat it with diligence. Really honor it because it's super important. And I'm right there by you, right there by your side. I'm on this journey with you. I love you so much. I'm really grateful that you spent this time with me today, and I'll see you in the next episode.